As a parent to kids with special needs, I don't know if you're like me, but have you ever had those days, weeks, maybe even months where you just felt like you really weren't making a difference? Well, get over it, because I've got news for you. You can, and here's how. In the book of Mark, we come to a place where Jesus had sent the disciples out by two to go preach and to heal, and they'd returned. And he said to them, guys, I know you're tired, so let's go find us a place to rest and talk about what happened. And so they got in a boat, and they rowed across the waters until they got to the other side and found a place just up a mountainside. And they went and sat down and decided that's where they were going to rest and to talk and to catch up. But some folks saw Jesus, and word spread very quickly, and before you knew it, a rather large crowd came out to where Jesus and the disciples were. And the scriptures say that Jesus had compassion on them, and so instead of deciding to rest, he started to teach them. Well, hours later, as it was getting into the evening time, one of the disciples, Philip, says to Jesus, "Lord, you ought to send these people away because they're probably getting pretty hungry and they need to go get something to eat." And Jesus looked at Philip and he said, "Why don't you give them something to eat?" Well, Philip said, "Lord, are you kidding me? It would take about 8 months worth of my salary to save enough money to buy enough bread to feed all of these folks. And even then, that probably wouldn't be enough." Well, Andrew, another disciple, was sitting there and he said, "Lord, I found a boy and he has 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. It's not much, but will that do?" And Jesus looked at him and he said, "Have the people sit down." And so they did. There was about 5,000 of them. And Jesus took those small loaves of bread and the fish and he lifted them up to heaven. And he gave thanks for what they had. And then he took the bread and the fish and he split it up and gave it to the disciples and told them to feed everybody. And they did. All 5,000 people. Everybody ate until they were full. Now, there are usually multiple truths that you can get out of any one story in God's Word. And one of the truths out of this story that really resonates with me as a parent of kids with special needs, 2 boys on the autism spectrum, I'm tired all the time. And I go to work and I come home. And there's not a lot of time for anything else. And so sometimes I feel like there's no big difference that I'm making. But one of the truths that I get from this story is simply this, that God can take the little bit that we have, if we're willing to give it to Him, and He can make a big difference. So if you're a mom, a dad of kids with special needs, you've got bills to pay and laundry to do, tutoring your kids, driving them to appointments that they need for therapy, working, trying to attend college at the same time, life's busy. My 2 boys are on the severe end of the autism spectrum, and not a lot has changed over the years. I don't feel like I'm making much of a difference. But see, there's the rub. It's not what I know, it's what God's Word says that's true. And in this story, what we discover is that Jesus can take a little and make a big difference. He did it then, and He can do it today, and He can do it through you. And here's one thing that I would challenge you with. But let me give you a verse first. 1 Corinthians 15:58 ends with this. "And there is nothing that you can ever do for the Lord that's useless." Or another version reads that there's nothing that you can do for the Lord that's ever in vain. That's Jesus' promise to you, no matter how big, or in the case of a lot of us special needs parents, how small. Nothing that you ever do is ever useless. So here's what I challenge you to do. Don't just know it, be a doer. Put it into action. Take one thing, one difference that you would like to make, and no matter how small that step may be that you can take, because again, I understand there's not a lot of time in your day, take that small step. And like that little boy who just had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, trust that Jesus can do something big with that, and He will.